Housing Act mirrors the federal act with one exemption, okay, with one exemption, because it's basically the same, except it takes away for sale by owners, okay? It takes away the for sale by owners. So who remembers that exemption we talked about on the federal side, right? The Federal Fair Housing Act of 1968. And we talked about that first exemption with FSBOs. Who remembers what that exemption was?
That you can sell. If you're selling less than 3.
If you own
three.
Mm-hmm.
That you can, at least with one.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
That's correct. You can sell one every 2 years, right?
2 years.
You can sell one every 2 years, right? And you can discriminate. Now, we live in North Carolina. And North Carolina law says what?
The state is stricter because it takes away the for sale by owner exemption.
Absolutely.
Even with real estate brokers.
Even with real estate brokers. So it doesn't matter if you are with a real estate broker or without a real estate broker. In the state of North Carolina, a for sale by owner cannot discriminate based on the protected classes. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's very important that you guys know that difference, because the state law is always stricter. It kind of overrules, right? And we'll talk about a particular case in just a second, how that happened. But also, Tammy had mentioned this as well. Here in North Carolina, the state law also, here you go, allows for single-sex dorms. So this allows all females to be in a dorm and all males to be in a dorm, as well as a family member in an apartment, okay? So these are some exemptions as it relates to North Carolina Fair Housing Act, which is 1983, but just know that they're the same. You violate one, you violate the other, but what is the major difference for North Carolina? It takes away the for sale by owner, allowing them to discriminate. So it doesn't matter if they own 2, 3, it doesn't matter if they're selling more than one, they cannot discriminate. Okay? So where do we file a complaint for state fair housing? Where do we file? We talked about it a little bit earlier, but we talked about you can file with the HUD, but they're going to refer you where? Yes, they're actually gonna refer you to the North Carolina Human Relations Commission, and those complaints need to be filed within what?
1 year.
1 year, and that's the main thing I want you guys to know. And if for whatever reason, if that complaint is not satisfied, if it's not resolved, then of course that's when you can do a private lawsuit in the Supreme Court. But again, the complaint has to be done within
1 year.
1 year. That's the key thing I want you to remember there. So we've been talking about rentals and how this relates to rentals. And even, there's your question, Barbara, right there, okay? Is pregnant women in violation? Is that a protected class? Absolutely.
Yes.
As well as disability, as well as religion. So we've got another scenario here. So let's go with scenario number 2. And I'm going to get some Jeopardy music going over here. All right, so y'all get ready. So, who wants to read this? Who hasn't read? Okay, Barbara, go ahead.
Mr. and Mrs. Jones located a 5-bedroom, 4.5 bathroom, single-family home for rent by owner in Apex, North Carolina. Mr. and Mrs. Jones had 5 children, and the house had more than enough room, and 3 of the children lived there only part-time. The Joneses' online application was quickly approved. Upon arrival to move in, the owners decided not to rent to the Jones family because of one of the property owners wasn't comfortable with having 5 children living in their house. The owners also told Mr. and Mrs. Jones that they didn't feel that the house would be cleaned properly and that it would impact the neighborhood. Is there a fair housing issue?
All right. So this is almost, and I mean, Tammy just actually said this. Tammy, you've been sitting in my note, in my computer, coming up with scenarios, but she just talked about this as an investor in having rental property, how they're putting applications to the bottom because of children. So let me see your answers, guys. Okay, tell me why. Tell me why.
Familial status as children.
All right, familial status. Okay. Is there anything that they could do differently that could push them in the clear?
Well, they did say that they were living there part-time, and it got changed when all 5 children came.
Okay. But as far as, it being a violation, a fair housing issue, what could the owner or owners, right, do differently? Because obviously they're in violation.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that they can do differently? Just not violate it, right?
That's just simple.
Right? It's not a trick question. It's not a trick question. I
Change
promise.
their mind.
Yes, just not discriminate against that protected class, right? That's really important, okay? So y'all are doing awesome. So let's go back. Oh gosh, y'all have to do my math. It may have been over 153 years or so, the Civil Rights Act of 1866. And this particular act, guys, which so many of us know, the one thing I just want you to know is that there is no exceptions. That's the main thing to this particular act, Civil Rights Act of 1866, is that there shall be no housing discrimination based on race, period. No exceptions. No exceptions to the rules. And of course, complaints are always enforced through a private lawsuit in the federal court. But the Civil Rights Act of 1866 was actually upheld, and I'm just going to blank this for a second. How many of you guys remember the case where it was Jones versus Mayer? Anybody remember that case? Okay, this was the case where it was in 1968, where an African American family was looking to purchase a home, and they felt like they were discriminated against based on race because it was a for sale by owner. Okay? And what happened was the Supreme Court upheld the 1866 Civil Rights Act, saying that there is no discrimination, okay, as it relates to housing, and they won the case. And this became one of the major cases that we all know today. And that was the case of discriminatory real estate sales. And actually, I have a little article right here. And this is St. Louis article right here. The court rules race bias in home sale, rental, and ruling on St. Louis case. And again, I just mentioned the court upheld the Civil Rights Act of 1866. And although we just talked about there was an exemption in 1968, right? We talked about there was an exemption. But guys, here's what I want you to know. While there's an exemption, the older Civil Rights Act of 1866 does not ever permit for discrimination based on race. I didn't say based on all 7 protected classes. Based on which protected class?
Race.
On race. And that's why this particular law from 1866 was upheld in the Supreme Court in 1968. Okay? And this is the actual couple right here. Jones versus Mayer. A couple other things that I want you to know. I know we're getting close to a break, but you also have a copy in your packet, guys, of the agency agreements, like the buyer agency agreement. You also have the exclusive listing agreement in there as well. And one of the things that you're going to see key on all of these particular documents is this one phrase right here. And that is, and if you're looking on any of the documents, you can find this same phrase. It's in all of our employee contracts, right? And that is the agent, which is the firm, right, shall conduct all brokerage activities in regard to this agreement without respect to race, color. Y'all remember that? This is the same 7 protected classes, right? Of any party or prospective party to the agreement. Further, realtors, they're addressing realtors, sorry about that, have an ethical duty to conduct such activities without respect here in North Carolina to sexual orientation or gender identity. Okay? Of any party or prospective party to this agreement. That is something in each of our documents. Okay? And it's the same, it's usually in bold, okay? And so that's why I say, as licensees, you should walk around with this sign all day long. Just put it on your forehead, put it on your chest, okay? There's no exceptions, there's no exemptions ever as a real estate agent, and that's why they are all in all of our documents. And so I just wanted to point that out there as well. We're almost getting ready for a quick review, but let's do another quick scenario. Now I want you to use your dry erase boards. And I'm going to give you scenario number 3 here. And I want you to just write down the answer for me. And then you can just show me the answer. Your broker in charge has just landed a listing in the most affluent subdivision in Love Life, North Carolina. Love Life has had an up and booming economy since 2017. And reflects the epitome of diversity. The sellers are Native Americans from a North Carolina Cherokee tribe, and your bid directs you to place an advertisement for the property in all of the local Native American publications and on the Cherokee Nation Facebook page. Is there a fair housing issue, is what I want you to be thinking about. The seller also requests that the showings be restricted to buyers of a particular race and national origin. What are you required to do? A, obey the sellers regardless of the agent's beliefs. B, ignore the seller's instructions and show to all potential buyers. Or C, terminate the listing if the seller will not reconsider the instruction. And you can talk to your partner next to you if you need to.
You have to leave the money on the table.
Yeah, right,
Yeah, you see.
It's like ignore.
See.
Between B and C.
All right, we've got, all right, all right. Absolutely. So I know this group over here put C immediately, okay? So terminate the listing if the seller will not consider the instructions. Absolutely. Also with the American with Disabilities Act, guys, know that we cannot discriminate, as I've mentioned before, against anybody with disabilities, but also that means that providing those reasonable modifications as it relates to employment, as we've talked about, that could be public transportation, public accommodation, telecommunications, or even complaints received through the Department of Justice. So that kind of covers everything, okay? So we're almost time for break. I believe we've got about 4 or 5 minutes before our break. So let's do a quick fair housing review. Are y'all ready? All right, here we go. Andy sells his only home in North Carolina without the use of a real estate agent. He chooses not to sell to a person based on race. What laws or acts, if any, has Andy violated? So let's first answer, has Andy violated anything?
Yes.
Okay, yes. What acts has he violated?
1866 and
Civil Rights Act of 1866?
And the Federal Fair Housing Act.
All of
The
them.
North Carolina Fair Housing Act of 1983. All right, y'all are doing good. Okay, good. Let's take another one here. What are the 7 protected classes in the Federal Fair Housing Act? Familiar status, race, color, sex, handicap, national origin,
Religion.
and religion. Very good. Y'all got this. Awesome. That is correct. That is correct. Here we go. In a conflict between federal and state fair housing legislation, one, I want you to write this on your board. You're going to answer one, the federal law will prevail, and you can just put the number. Two, the more recent law prevails. Three, the stricter law prevail. And four, the state law will prevail. All right, and the answer is the stricter law will prevail. Good job, guys. The stricter law will prevail. All right, the Civil Rights Act of 1866 does which of the following? A, allows exemptions only for homes sold with the assistance of a real estate professional, or effectively prohibits all discrimination in real estate based on race. A or B?
B.
All right. Absolutely. Good job. Effectively prohibits all discrimination in real estate based on race. Well, guys, it is time for your break. I want to thank you so much for coming to this session, and I'll see you guys back here in just a little bit. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.